Hello, and welcome to Conversations Worth Your While, a show in which I chat with really cool people about interesting topics to spark, inspire, and motivate both personal and professional change. Now, today's topic is narcissistic abuse, how to spot it, and what to do. And this conversation is worth your while if you suspect you or someone that you love is involved in a narcissistic relationship. We're going to talk about how to recognize a narcissist. There are actually 10 signs because the sooner you know how to spot these people, the easier it is to avoid them in the future. But if you're already involved with a narcissist, whether it's a parent or a partner, we'll also share 6 ways to protect your mental, physical, and emotional health. And this is information that can save your sanity and maybe even save your life. So, I'm Linda Bucher, and I'm an authentic, heart centered master coach, a mindset mentor, a transformational speaker, a show host, and authored an MBA. But I believe that each of us has gifts to share with the world, and you are here to make a difference. My gift and my purpose lies in synthesizing my experience, skills, and talents to coach, lead, mentor, and teach. And I love to work with smart, passionate people who are excited about sharing their gifts and making that difference. And I love to help them to discover their path, to balance their life, to align their energy in the direction with those gifts. But you can't do that if you are in a relationship that is preventing you from do that. So today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Lynn Catalano. She is the author of Wrecking Ball Relationships, and Lynn helps people to identify and rise above toxic relationships. So, hi, Lynn. I am so happy that you are here today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Linda, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, you do very important work. And I know that you don't just know about this work, you've actually lived it. So, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience with a toxic relationship with a narcissist?
Absolutely. So, for me, I was blissfully unaware of who this person was in my life. And I think that's how it is for so many of us, and especially if we have someone else who is buffering them.
Mm.
And that was my mother. My mother really absorbed all of that awful, awful behavior from my father. And then she passed away quite suddenly. And I'm an only child. And I was left with this person. So at first, I wrote off his odd behavior as grief. Who am I to judge what grief looks like? Certainly, grief manifests differently in all of us. But then the behavior continued, and his cruel and unusual words and actions continued. And it's like a drip, 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 where it just it leaves you questioning what's happening and makes you so confused how this person who you thought loved you the most, or at least was reciprocating that love that you gave, could act like this. And it's very difficult. I found myself in a place where I was very lost and confused, and I really thought I was the only one who felt this. There's no, it just can't possibly be anyone else on the planet that felt this. Well, then for me, I had a very big episode with my father that really revealed who he was.
Mm.
And I wrote a chapter about that in my book, and I call it Shock and Awe, because it was, I discovered that he had gone to the CEO of the place I had previously worked. When I left there, they asked me to be on a board of directors of a new system they were becoming part of. I was flattered. I said yes. And naively, I shared that information with my father. So he went, unbeknownst to me, to the CEO and in a public place, and said to him, "Why would you pick Lynn to serve on that board when I'm available?" And the CEO, a dear friend of mine, came to me and said, "I'm so sorry. This is just so shocking to me. I had to share it with you." I no longer worked for him. There was no skin in the game. It didn't affect him, didn't affect our relationship at all. But it was unbelievable to me. And so at first, I just took it all in and I kept it inside for weeks. And I thought, this is crazy. I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating. I need to confront him. I need to find out, if it's true, if he did this. And so I confronted him, and he answered in the most typical way that someone who suffers from narcissistic personality disorder would answer. First, he said, "Oh, that's a misinterpretation." And I said, "How?" Never to be answered. Then he said, "It was a joke. I was joking." And I thought, were you? And then a week later, he emailed me and he said, "That CEO asked me for my resume." Now, I want you to know, I'm an attorney by education. I don't know if it was the attorney in me or it was just the fact that I needed answers. I went back to my friend, the CEO, and I said, quick, 3 questions. Was it a misinterpretation? No, there's nothing that could have been misinterpreted. 2, was it a joke? Was he joking with you? Absolutely not. And 3, did you ask him for his resume? No, not at all.
Wow.
So that's how I got here.
So that all led you to be on this beautiful path that you're on now, helping people to recognize and move past these narcissistic relationships. So this is a beautiful segue. You just shared a few signs, and I know there are 10 signs that you share with people as an educator as well, how people can recognize a narcissist, either before it's too late, right? So they don't get involved, or to so that they can come to the conclusion, if it is true, that they are in a narcissistic relationship. And if that is the case, then it's really important to know this, because you won't take the next steps that we will leave you with later in our conversation today if you aren't aware that you're in a relationship with a narcissist. And we're not born knowing these steps, right? It takes someone who's lived through them, these signs, to go, these are the signs. And so now, I really think understanding and education, the knowledge is really key to change. So, this you explained about how, as a victim of a narcissistic relationship, you felt like, am I going crazy? What's wrong with me? Why doesn't this person love me the way they promised to love me? Or the way I needed to be loved, right? And I just want to draw attention again that it doesn't have to be a narcissistic parent. It could be a sibling. It could be a partner. It could be who you thought was your best friend, right? These signs of narcissism are across, their behaviors always like this. And if you recognize this behavior, all of these, if you can check all these boxes, then you are in a narcissistic relationship. So let's start with these 10 signs.
Okay.
We'll expand on just a few of them here and there. So
Okay.
I'm gonna let you start.
Okay. The first sign, and this is really so consistent across all relationships, as you just said, they are incapable of exhibiting empathy. They just can't. Empathy is allowing us to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, to understand how they're thinking and feeling. People who suffer from this personality disorder are not capable of exhibiting empathy.
Yeah, it's important that we recognize they are not capable. So we want to stop expecting them to be
Yes.
capable of what they're not capable of. Okay.
Yes.
But if you
Absolutely.
recognize this, that time after time after time, it's impossible for them to understand how you actually feel. That is that
Yes.
lack of empathy. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Number 2, go ahead.
Number 2, they need to control everything. So they need to control the situation. They need to control people. They need to control everything all the time. And if they're not in control, they're going to throw a tantrum. If you don't want a reaction from them, stay on their script. Make sure you're staying how they want things to go. And don't challenge them. Don't question them. It interrupts their control.
Ah, interesting. So that's more like of a self-preservation thing. So it's not saying, what you're not saying is give in. That is certainly not what you're saying.
No,
Saying when you
no.
recognize someone has an actual compulsive need to control, you're just
Yes.
getting in their way, and it's going to make them more adamant and more harsh. So when you recognize this, let them be who they are. It doesn't mean you can't take steps. And again, we'll move to that in the second part of our conversation today. But they
Yes.
don't just have this need. It's an uncontrollable um, obsession, and they will do whatever it takes to
Yes.
gain control. So that's fascinating as well.
They're disordered. They suffer from a disorder. They are not normal. They don't have normal reactions.
Mm, right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's really important to know, um,
Yes.
for many reasons, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But okay, number three.
Number three, they lie. They lie all the time. They lie to make themselves look better. They lie to pretend they're compassionate. And the really hard part to understand is that they believe their own lies. It all
Mm,
goes to their false reality. I want you to know, I went back to my father years later after he had given me the silent treatment for years after shock and awe. And he told me that the CEO asked him for his resume because
still.
he believed those lies.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
whew, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Move on to number four.
Number four, they don't communicate well or sometimes at all. Narcissists expect you to be able to read their mind as to what they want or need. And when you can't, or you do it incorrectly, they get frustrated and angry.
Mm, okay. All right. Yeah, that's really good. That expectation that
Yeah.
they're having. And again, when they don't, because of this compulsive nature that they have for control and without empathy and for them to be right, you know,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
yeah, if you're not reading them the way they are, then it's all you. It's all your fault. You're the crazy one. You're the one there's something wrong with, right? So
Right.
that they are, basically making you feel like you're the one in the wrong because they can't see beyond their what they're incapable of,
Yes.
and their obsessions and needs for control, etc. So, wow. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Move on to number five.
They absolutely, I just blanked on what it was. They absolutely will not respect your boundaries. They will push you and threaten you to do things that you don't want to meet their wants and needs, regardless of your boundaries.
Right. And I know sometimes it feels easier to give in than to stand up for yourself, especially when you're
Yeah.
working with a narcissist and you recognize that standing up for yourself gets you absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
Right? So giving in and becoming beaten down, which is your own choice, but you're choosing it because it just seems easier at the time,
Yeah.
or sometimes you're thinking, is it me? Maybe I am, you know.
They
So
want you to do
maybe my
that. They want
boundary
you.
is wrong. Maybe I don't really deserve what I want in my boundary. So, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in the second part of our conversation as well, more about boundaries for sure. So, okay. All right, number six.
Number six, they're not accountable for their actions and they do not sincerely apologize. So, it's always someone else or something else's fault. It's never theirs. They're going to deny, deflect, and lie. They're not going to own whatever it is they did. And then they're famous for a non apology. And what is that? What is that? That's apologizing for something irrelevant to actually hurting you. So I want you to know, when I confronted my father about what he did with the CEO and how he came out against me, competing with me, he said to me, I am sorry for ever talking to him.
Right. Wow.
That's not an apology. So,
No, no, not at all. Wow. So again,
yeah.
they're unable to take responsibility for their actions. Narcissists, they don't think there's anything wrong with them, and they
No.
won't, no matter what you do, which is why an intervention isn't going to work. And it's also why, you know, if you're honest with yourself, there's no possible way to a resolution because
Right.
they are incapable of change, and
Right.
they're incapable of understanding you. They're incapable of getting that aha that interventions are meant to create because they cannot have this empathy. Right.
Plus, they can never let themselves be vulnerable.
Mm.
So they'll never say, "You're right. I shouldn't have done that."
Mm. Right.
All I ever wanted was my father to say, "I didn't mean to say that. Maybe I was a little jealous, but I
Right.
shouldn't have said that because you're my only child and I don't want to hurt you." But
Right.
he never did.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. All right.
All
Number
right.
7.
Number 7, they tend to behave one way in public and another in private. So this is known as being two-faced or wearing a mask. In public, these types of people are often known as charismatic, wonderful, generous people. And in private, they take the opportunity to emotionally abuse those closest to them behind closed doors.
Mm. Yeah.
Awful.
And that can really cause the other people in the other side of the relationship to like, how can I share this with other people? They'll never believe me. They only see that charismatic, nice guy, nice girl, you
Yes.
know, side. They
Yes.
don't like, they'll think I'm crazy. I can't share this. So then we
Exactly.
feel isolated, right? Which
Yes.
is, I know that
Yes.
you've talked about this, that's kind of their intention, is to isolate.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, number 8.
Number 8, they use tactics like the silent treatment, triangulation, and gaslighting. They use these to confuse, punish, and malign their victims. You know, it's again, this goes to conflict resolution. There is no conflict resolution when someone gives you the silent treatment for days, weeks, months, and years. There's no opportunity to resolve anything.
Hmm, right. Yeah. Okay, number 9.
They have an excessive need for recognition, praise, envy all the time. It's literally their oxygen. It's also known as narcissistic supply. And if you perhaps get more of one of those things than them, be prepared for them to employ one of those tactics, silent treatment, triangulation, or gaslighting to punish you. You will be punished.
Mm, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And the 10th sign
The
that you're
10th
dealing with a
sign is
narcissist.
that they always stay in the shallow end of the relationship. This was so hard for me to recognize, but they don't know you at all. They never take the time to go deep in the relationship. They never ask you open-ended questions. They only ask you things like chocolate or vanilla, not why do you feel that way? What do you want to do with your life? Where are you going with this concept? Never.
Mm, okay. All right. So if someone checks all of those boxes,
Yeah.
or you suspect that someone checks all those boxes, you really might be dealing with, or that a person, a loved one, might be dealing with a narcissistic toxic relationship. So
Yes.
when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, right, when you're involved with them, the thing to do is to protect your mental and your physical and your emotional health, because those are the
Yes.
things that are getting beaten down by someone who's not even aware they're doing it and doesn't see anything wrong with their behavior, right?
Right. Right.
So we've outlined, like 6 different things that you can do, and these don't have to be done in any particular order. A lot of them are
No.
just informational and some food for thought, and then there's some actual things that you can do. So let's
Yeah.
move on to that. So I'm going to start here with number 1 is, now that we've explained these 10 signs, right? You've got to accept that they are who they are. Stop arguing with it. Stop having expectations that they're going to be anybody different. They're unable to be anybody different. And know that you can love them from afar, okay? Which is how you start, because this might be someone you love, a best friend, a sister, a parent, a partner, right? That and but I like to explain, to see these people as wounded animals. They're in a corner, they're wounded. If you get in close, you're going to get bit and scratched. It's just the way it's going to be. So it's really about moving back, moving away. It doesn't mean you have to leave right now. That is not the first step. It's accepting and knowing and seeing them differently. And embrace, like what you were saying, embrace their communication style, right? They're trying to provoke you. Don't let them. Like, think about them. This is all this wounded animal can be and do. This is it. Anything you want
You
to
know,
add to that?
well, I do believe that hurt people hurt people.
Hmm.
However, I just don't see it as an excuse to continue this type of behavior over and over and over again. And that's what they do. That narcissistic personality disorder is the least likely disorder for the people that suffer from it to actually seek help.
Mm,
The victims are more likely to seek help.
right. Right. Because they don't see anything wrong with them.
Right.
Right. So
No,
you can't, in a relationship, you cannot fix that wounded animal. And
no,
it's not necessarily an excuse they're using if they don't even think they're doing anything wrong or that there's something
right.
wrong with them. Um, and so having that expectation, even that's why I'm saying we got to accept who they are. If they're
Yeah,
unable, like we could say, you should go see a therapist, you should try to get better, you should, right?
right.
But the reality is they don't see any reason, right?
No,
But those of us who see reasons to get, to help ourselves grow, become something more, right, than who we've allowed ourselves to be, right? We're the ones going out and saying, you know, I want to grow. I've got to take this responsibility. They're unable to do that. Okay, so yeah. Number two is to know that you are not the cause of their behavior. As much as they want you to believe there's something wrong with you, you're not worthy of love, attention, affection, right? You're all wrong. You have it wrong, right? You are actually not the cause. But that doesn't mean there isn't something that you can and maybe perhaps should do differently. And the first step, in my experience, because my own personal experience is having gone through a transformation of victim to hero, because victims are powerless and there's no way you're going to be able to help yourself and move through the steps that Lynn and I are sharing with you today if you feel powerless. Powerless people don't take action. They don't take action in their minds. They don't say, how can I change? They believe something outside of them has to change, someone or something. And then they're in this place that I call hoping and waiting, which is the most powerless, dark, dreary place. I spent decades there, so I know my way around, right? This hoping and waiting place. Waiting for someone or something else to change in order for our lives to get better. That is an impossible place. There's no way out as long as you're hoping and waiting. The way out is when something inside of you says, wait a minute, maybe there's something I can do for me because no one else is coming to my rescue. Nothing else. Life is not changing, and I'm done. I'm sick and tired of asking this question, why me? So I, I have a, a value tool that moves people from victim to hero. And that's a really important thing because it's really about changing your mindset. And the mindset is the victim's mindset says, this happens to me. That happened to me. Where the hero says, when this happened, I did this. And the fact that someone is even listening to our episode today means you are a hero because you are doing something. You are in action in some way, even if it's just to become educated, right? Which is Lynn's giving us some beautiful things that she's educating us in very beautiful ways. So knowing you're not the cause is important, but equally as important is knowing that there are things for you to do to change. And that'll bring us to number 3, which is about setting boundaries and sticking to them. Lynn, I'll let you talk about this first.
So, it's so important for you, even though we discussed that they're not going to respect your boundaries, it's still so important for you to set them. Boundaries are there to protect you and protect your overall health from these types of people. I've had a lot of coaching calls where I've talked to people about, giving them very finite periods of time where you're available. You're not completely available to these people. You're going to be available from 1 to 2 on Saturday. That's when you can talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. You're not trapped there indefinitely. And you're going to protect yourself and keep moving on. Because as we talked about, these people are much more tolerable if you see them less.
Right, that's true. And when it comes to boundaries, there's really three things. You've got to set the boundary, and it has to be a boundary that is set in self-love. Okay, so it's the boundary isn't about someone else's poor behavior. The boundary is about loving yourself and saying, here's, I function best when this is where the boundary is. Okay. So you've got to set that boundary. You've got to know what it is. And when you know what that boundary is, you've also got to decide what the, what's going to happen if someone moves through your boundary, right? If they step over that fence you've put up, right? That might be a beautiful picket fence with some flowers around it, but here's what's going to happen. When you step over that fence, this is what's going to happen. So the consequences, you need to set that ahead of time. Saying the boundary without the consequence it's never going to work. So it's the boundary, and here's the consequence. So that's the setting boundaries. The second piece is you've got to communicate those boundaries ahead of time, not when you're in the middle of an argument. That is never going to work. Not when someone's already walked through your beautiful garden, right? That is not the time to communicate the boundaries. You do it ahead of time. When this happens, this is what I will do. And it's about you. It has to be something in your power. You can't enforce a boundary that's not in your power. So this is what I will do. I will walk away. Whatever you choose your boundary, the enforcement to be, what you're going to do that you've determined ahead of time. You have to communicate it clearly, right? And even if someone disagrees, it doesn't matter. It's just this is the communication of it. Now with you've communicated ahead of time. Now it's like in a basketball game, the players know the rules, right? Doesn't mean they're never going to foul. They're going to foul. They're going to get in the heat of the moment, whatever, they're going to foul. But that referee is going to blow the whistle every time. And that's the third part. That's the enforcement of the boundary. You can't enforce boundaries sometimes because then people think, well, maybe it is, maybe she won't, maybe she will, maybe she won't, right? Or here, right? So enforcing boundaries 100% of the time. You always have to blow the whistle. A foul is always a foul is a foul is a foul. You blow the whistle and then you take the action that was the consequence that's within your power every time. 100%. I know it can be exhausting, but the point of boundaries is not about behavior modification of the other person, especially narcissists. They are incapable of changing their behavior. They have a disorder. They're incapable. The boundary is there to protect you and to do it out of self-love. So you want to identify that boundary and the consequence and set that. You want to communicate it ahead of time. And then when you blow the whistle and you enforce it, it's just about remember, because you did this, I'm doing that. And it doesn't even have to be because you did this, because probably for a narcissist, that's the worst language you can use, right? So more something like, when this happens, I do this. I told you, and this is what's happening. You don't own any other explanation. It's as short as blowing that whistle because you've already communicated the rules ahead of time. So I know I could talk about boundaries all day long, but let's move on to number 4, which is about your support network. Go ahead, Lynn.
Narcissists like to isolate you from your friends and family. They like to separate you because they don't want you to share their toxic behavior with anyone. They want to keep up that image. That's so important to them, their image. And, I speak from experience. His image was more important than any relationship with me. But your friends and family are going to give you so much. Not only will you be able to get out what's happening to you, even though you're filled with shame and guilt and embarrassment about what's occurred, you're going to get it out so it doesn't fester inside you and cause you all those physical and visceral problems. But more than that, they're going to validate what's happened to you. More likely than not, they're going to say that they've seen those types of behaviors in that person. And that is going to be such a positive experience for you.
Yeah. And sometimes it's really hard, when you're feeling guilty or you're feeling shamed or embarrassed. I'm involved with this narcissist, and it's embarrassing, right? And that vulnerability is a strength. So when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and you get it off your chest, then only then can you start this journey to be moving
Yes.
forward, right?
Yes.
And to begin that healing.
Yes.
Because you
Yes.
cannot help yourself from a place of isolation.
No.
You
You
can't,
can't.
I mean, every human needs this validation. Like, okay, tell me I'm not crazy. I just want to check my sanity. And when you
Yep.
communicate to other people your experience, and now you have this checkbox, these 10 checkbox checks, you're like, oh, I need to, when you get that support, that loving
Yes.
support, and choose carefully, because not everybody can be a compassionate witness. So choose carefully who you're sharing with, who your support network is. And when it comes to support networks, even like there's a lot of support groups out in the world. But if some of them, and it's been my experience, like through a grief group, when my husband died, I was at a grief group, and there were people who had been there for like 9 and 12 years, and I'm like, well, this group obviously isn't working if they're still if they're still in this much pain 9 to 12 years later,
Oh,
right? And so a support group of people who just want to whine and be heard and don't want to take do what it takes to move through, that is not those are not compassionate witnesses. A compassionate witness is there in love, and they and it could be a support group. I'm not saying they're all that way. They're certainly not all that way. Some of them are very beautiful. But a
right.
support group that is has people who are on the other side, who have healed, who have moved through. This is who you want to surround yourself with if it's a support group. And then for the friends and family, the ones who aren't going to like tell you what to do, because they can't possibly know what's best for you. They want what's best for you, but they can't know what's best for you. Only you can know what's best for you. So
Right.
make sure you choose compassionate witnesses, those who will listen and say, I get it. I had an inkling too, but I didn't think it was my place to tell you, maybe. Right. So, yeah.
Right.
All right, let's move on to number 6. Number 6 is about self care. Lynn, I'll let you talk first.
So, self care, so often when I speak about self care, people automatically think Bath and Body Works. But, self care is such an important concept to our overall health. It's been recognized and referenced by the World Health Organization. Self care is about staying healthy, it's about eating right and exercising and sleeping. It's about taking time to meditate or pray or whatever makes you happy, whatever brings you joy. You need to find that and practice those things.
Yeah. Now, I think cerebrally, a lot of people recognize self care is important. It's good for me. I need to be in the best place if I'm going to move through something hard. And this is going to be something hard to separate from, right? But what happens is, due to narcissists in our lives and due to the way the child's brain processes things, we believe we're not worthy. We believe we're not worthy of self care. We believe we're not worthy of boundaries. And if this is the case, that is the place to start, is to repair your sense of worthiness. Something I do all the time with people, because everybody's got it to some degree. But
Yeah.
people who've been, especially if you've been raised by a narcissistic parent, you've probably got a big, giant, gaping hole in how worthy you feel,
Yep.
and so self-care, although cerebrally it's a good idea, if you're actually unable to do it, that's the reason. That is the reason you don't believe you're worthy of goodness and joy.
Yep.
And that
Yep.
is something that people like Lynn and I can help you with. And that just brings us to this is a conclusion, and we just want to talk a little bit through this, but the relationship as it is not sustainable for the long term. And you may know this or you may not know this, but I'm sure you probably know this at a subconscious level. Because if you're not showing up your best self for the people that you love, then you're doing them a disservice. This is the reason. If you can't find a reason to move through this for you because you don't believe you're worthy of it, do it. Start moving and healing for the people around you, because they deserve your best self, even if it's tiny, small steps. Because so what you've got to do is you've got to separate yourself. And this is not doesn't mean immediately you're going to walk out of this relationship tomorrow. Now it's not sustainable long term. So that it's got to change and there's got to be separation. And if that can be a separation, that's no contact, fine. But if this is like a spouse or you're someone you're divorced from, you've got children in common. There's no possible way you can have a no contact relationship or
Right.
difficult at best, very difficult at best. So, but you can separate yourself using the tools that Lynn and I have shared with you today so that you can start this healing practice. And we talked about how this how the narcissist is not going to help themselves. They're not going to seek out therapy. They're not going to do that. But that the victims of narcissism, and I'll use the word victim for now, knowing you're going to go through and become from victim to hero so that you can start to help yourself, because that mindset shift is absolutely essential in order for you to help yourself. The people who are in these relationships with narcissists, they're the ones who are much more likely to seek out help. Those are the people like you listening to our broadcast today. And I'm going to let Lynn start, and then I'll jump in about how you can help yourself. There's a difference, right, between therapy and coaching. I'll let Lynn talk about that first. And then she has a tool that can certainly help you as well. So go ahead, Lynn.
So, I often discuss with my potential clients the differences between therapy and coaching, because while I hold a BA in psychology, I am not a therapist. I am a narcissistic abuse coach, and I only coach people in that area. Therapy can go on infinitely. For all intents and purposes, you could be in therapy for your life. And please don't misunderstand me. I am a firm believer in therapy. However, I went to therapy, and my therapist was not well versed in someone with narcissistic personality disorder. And so what happens then is that you're getting a broad base of counseling, but you're not getting specific into what has affected you. So when it comes to coaching, my coaching program has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And in 3 months, we're done. And I have provided you with a foundation from which you can draw to have healthy relationships, because they do exist. And I want you to have healthy relationships in the future.
Yeah. I often say that the difference between therapy and coaching is like the difference between a doctor and a personal trainer. A doctor is there to get you from sick to well. Victims of abuse are not sick, right?
Right.
The abuser is the one who needs to get from sick to well. But again,
Yeah.
the narcissists aren't going to do that.
No.
But a coach, on the other hand, unlike a therapist, is more like a personal trainer. Our job is to get people from well to peak performance. We can't get on the treadmill for you, but we
Right.
know what it's going to take to get you to peak performance. And when you find a coach, you should find a coach who is on the other side of what you're going through. This is what you want to look for in a coach. So Lynn told her story. She only told, I know, a small part of it. I know there's so many more pieces to it. But if you are, ready to move through this, you should contact Lynn. And I'm going to let her tell you in a minute about her book, which is really cool. And then on the other side, I'm also a coach, but I help people to repair their sense of worthiness and align, like discover who they are, their purpose, their talents, their gifts, and align them all in a way to make positive ripples in the world. So if you're there, then if that's what you want, if that lights you up, then that would be a reason to contact me, because I'm on the other side of that. So Lynn, thank you so much for being here today. Please tell us a little bit about your book.
So my book, Wrecking Ball Relationships, is the guidebook that I was looking for when I was going through this. I wanted to know that I wasn't alone. I wanted to know that the state of confusion and feeling lost was incredibly common. And so what I did was I wrote a book where I share the concepts of narcissistic personality disorder by illustrating them with stories. They're my stories, and they're stories of many other people who have suffered these types of relationships in all different levels. So it's romantic partners and parents and siblings and bosses and coworkers and friends. And you're going to find great comfort in other people's stories that will confirm that you are not alone.
Yeah. That's beautiful. It's so
Thank you.
lovely to
Thank you.
for you to have created the resource you wish you had when you were going
Yes.
through this. Yeah, beautiful.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to put your and my contact information into the description of this video, along with a link to your how they can get your book and your website. And also, I know that you offer if people want to get in a conversation with you, right? They can just
Yes.
get into that. How can they do that?
So it's very easy. I think you're going to give them the link, but it's right on the front page of my website. And they can book a free session with me to figure out if we'll work well together and if I can help them. And that's all revealed pretty quickly in 15 to 30 minutes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Um,
Yes.
that's always a great thing for us coaches to offer is just, a connection call to see
Yes.
because there's someone for everyone. Um,
Yes.
and if the universe has brought you here to listen to this on whatever day you're listening to this episode, then it's given you a way to move forward. And so Lynn has a way, I have a way, whatever resonates in your soul is the direction you should go with because you've come this far and you didn't come this far to get only this far. You've stumbled upon this episode for a reason. So I'd like to thank you, Lynn, for sharing your time with us today. I'd like to thank the audience for sharing your time with us today. Please subscribe and remember to check the description where you'll find our contact information and some free tools and resources that we're gifting you. And until next time, please make sure you've made this conversation worth your while by fueling the spark it ignited.